All right, guys, welcome to day 3 makeup work. Here we go. Today we are talking about how to read poetry for poetic form and graphic elements. So it's why the writer chose to write the poem the way it looks on the page. So the form that they took in poetry, it's not just about the words, it can be about punctuation, line length, just the way it's arranged on the page. So you can use the space and how you put it there to say as much as the words themselves. So here we go. Same thing, 3 read method. First read, I'm just going to read to write down what I understand, starting with the title, Little Orphan Annie. Okay, what do I understand? There's a little orphan Annie. Now, what you guys might not know is that back in the day when this was written, Little Orphan Annie was a cartoon character that they did like a cartoon strip in the newspaper on. So this is sort of a famous 1920s orphan character, cartoon character. But Little Orphan Annie. Okay, so this is about Little Orphan Annie. And the story was she was a little orphan who was poor in the 1920s because of the Depression. Her parents had died, and she was adopted by a very wealthy man. So it was her story. They're just using her name, I think. Okay, so what do I understand? Little orphan Annies come to our house to stay. Okay, so this orphan has a home. And wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away and shoo the chickens off the porch and dust the hearth and sweep. So she's come to work. That's what I'm understanding. Not just be a child. And make the fire and bake the bread and earn her board and keep. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we set around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun. So the kids are having fun. I get that. What are they doing? A listening to the witch tales at Annie tells about, and the goblins at gets ya if you don't watch out. So Annie tells them scary stories. And I like it. Okay. So we basically get it. Okay. This is not a hard poem to understand. What's hard is it's written in dialect. So it's got this like, weird sound to it. The words are notice how all the words are short. So there's a couple of things about this poem that you're going to notice. You're going to notice all these little hyphens. You're like, why do we have all these little marks up here? Not hyphens. I'm sorry. All these little marks up the top. Why do we have all those little accent marks? And then down here, look at this. If you don't watch out, definitely the right lines are written in a weird way. But now I'm going to go back the second time. I'm going to read to make sure I understand it. We know this is about Little Orphan Annie. There's nothing else I get from the title. And I'm going to read to the sentences. And I go, oh, wait, there's not very much. So there's a semicolon here. So that's going to mean a change since there's a semicolon there. And everything else is done by commas. So you're not really stopping the thought until you get here and there's an exclamation point. So we're going to read to those stops, the pause thought here and the exclamation point here. All right, so here we go. Little orphan Annies come to our house to stay and wash the cups and saucers up and brush the crumbs away and shoo the chickens off the porch and dust the hearth and sweep and make the fire and bake the bread and earn her board and keep. Not much else. I might need to look up the phrase board and keep, but she's earning it by the work she's doing. So she's not just brought there to be a child. I'm going to say, here's kind of just new words. She's not a child. She's not being treated like a child, but a servant. And back in those days, that happened a lot. People would adopt older children to come in and be a household servant because it was free. And all us other children, when the supper things is done, we set around the kitchen fire and has the mostest fun a listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about and the goblins that get you if you don't watch out. So pretty good. I understand it. I understand at least 80% of it. I'm moving on. So here's the kind of questions that you're going to see on STAR about graphic elements. The poet placed lines blank and blank in their own stanza. So we don't see that here. That'd be one where maybe they took just a couple, like maybe you have regular stanzas, like 4 lines, 4 lines, 4 lines. Then all of a sudden there's one with just 2 lines. Well, why'd they do that? What does the break between stanzas blank and blank help the poet convey? So they wrote this stanza, then there's a space, and they wrote this stanza. So why did they put the space there? What's the most likely reason that the poet uses capitalization in line, whatever? So maybe you have one where there's a word that's not supposed to be capitalized. So look, Annie's capitalized, little orphan Annie's capitalized. This is names and first words of the sentence of the lines. So those aren't weird, but maybe you have a weird word that shouldn't be capitalized in the middle of the poem. So why are they giving you the capital? Okay. Also, this is about abrupt dialogue. That poem happened to have dialogue that was real short in it. So you're like, why are they using so much dialogue that's just one or two words? That's different. I should pay attention to that. Repetition, the repetition of the words. Why do they use that same word over and over again? If you see repetition in a poem, always pay attention. The poet chose an irregular and unpredictable rhyme scheme. So they're saying it's not where it's a pattern. It's not this rhymes and this rhymes and this rhymes and this rhymes. This has a regular rhyme scheme. Little over nannies have come to stay, away, sweep, keep, done, fun, about, out. So this has got a regular pattern. It has, rhyme, 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 rhyme. Every line rhymes with the next line. Okay. Other poems don't. So why is the rhyme scheme the way it is? What's that supposed to do for you? If it's a regular rhyme scheme, it's usually not telling you anything. That's just the way the poet chose to wrote. It's when it's weird. Okay. So why does this poem have two stanzas? This one doesn't, but that question, dividing the poem into two stanzas, we could say, why does this poem have just one semicolon? Well, here's telling us about Annie, and here's telling us about the kids that Annie entertains. So we've got two perspectives, what Annie does and then the kids that she entertains. So that semicolon's there. So a question you could ask about this poem is, why does the poet use a semicolon instead of two stanzas? So the obvious question about this poem is, why does the poem write, if you don't watch out, the way that he does? What's the point of that? How are they trying to get you to read it? So in this case, what's it talking about? Well, they're sitting around, they're hearing scary stories, they're listening to the witch tales that Annie tells about, and the goblins, it gets you. If you don't watch out. And then you have that exclamation point. And in my mind, they're doing this to increase the suspense of those words. That's how a kid hears them. If you don't watch out, it slows you down. It's building on each other. It's creating the suspense and the fear that the kids felt when they heard the stories. That's how we're reading for graphic elements in poetic form. So in poetry, don't just pay attention to the words. Pay attention to the physical way the poem is written. That's it. Now it's your turn. Go ahead and go on to the next step. Check here. Take your quiz with some poems there to see if you can figure out why the poet wrote the poet physically on the paper the way that they did. Thanks. Talk to you later.